I was home alone one evening, enjoying the quiet. As I settled in to watch a movie, I heard a strange noise coming from the basement. It sounded like something had fallen or been knocked over. At first, I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just the house settling or maybe a draft moving something around. But the noise persisted, becoming louder and more frequent. My curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to investigate. Grabbing a flashlight, I cautiously made my way down the creaky stairs to the basement. The air grew colder with each step, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I shone the flashlight around the room. Boxes and old furniture were scattered everywhere, but nothing seemed out of place. I stood still, listening intently, trying to catch any sound. Suddenly, I heard the noise again, this time coming from the far corner of the basement. I slowly walked toward the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. The beam of the flashlight revealed nothing unusual at first, but then I noticed a small, old cabinet door slightly ajar. I hesitated for a moment, my instincts telling me to turn back, but I had to know what was causing the noise. With a trembling hand, I opened the cabinet door wider and shone the flashlight inside. To my surprise, there was nothing but some old, dusty tools and a few cobwebs. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking I had just been imagining things. But as I turned to leave, I heard a whisper, so faint it was almost inaudible. I froze, my skin crawling with fear. The whisper repeated, clearer this time, and I realized it was coming from right behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. My heart raced, and I bolted up the stairs, not daring to look back. When I finally reached the safety of the living room, I locked the basement door and sat down, trying to calm my racing heart. I never figured out what caused those noises or where the whisper came from, but I knew one thing for certain: I would never go into that basement alone again. One night, I was alone at home, getting ready for bed. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when I glanced at the mirror. At first, everything seemed normal, but then I noticed something strange. There was someone else in the reflection, standing right behind me. I spun around quickly, but there was no one there. I looked back at the mirror, and the figure was gone. My heart was pounding, but I tried to convince myself that it was just a trick of the light or my imagination playing tricks on me. I finished brushing my teeth and went to the bedroom, still feeling uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Every time I passed by a mirror, I would catch a glimpse of a shadow or a movement, but when I looked directly, there was nothing. Later that night, I woke up suddenly. The room was dark, and the only light came from the moon outside the window. I felt a chill run down my spine, and turned to look at the mirror on the wall. There it was again, the same figure, standing behind me, staring directly at me through the mirror. I jumped out of bed and turned on all the lights, searching the room. There was no one there. I checked every corner, every closet, but I was alone. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it was just a dream, but I couldn't shake the fear. For the rest of the night, I stayed away from mirrors, not wanting to see that eerie figure again. The next morning, I covered all the mirrors in the house. I never wanted to experience that haunting reflection again. Even now, I still avoid looking into mirrors when I'm alone, afraid that I'll see that shadowy figure staring back at me. One evening, I was home alone reading a book in the living room. Everything was peaceful until the lights suddenly began to flicker. At first, I thought it was just a power surge, but the flickering continued, almost rhythmically. It felt like someone was deliberately playing with the lights. I got up to check the light switches, but they were all in their proper positions. I then went to the circuit breaker, thinking maybe something had tripped. Everything seemed fine there too. As I stood in the basement, the lights upstairs started to flicker more intensely. Feeling a bit unnerved, I went back upstairs. As soon as I reached the top step, the flickering stopped abruptly. I let out a sigh of relief, hoping that whatever caused it was over. I sat back down and tried to get back to my book, but I couldn't focus. The house felt different, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. A few minutes later, the flickering started again, this time even more erratic. The lights would blink on and off in rapid succession, casting eerie shadows around the room. My heart began to race, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. It was as if the house was alive and trying to communicate with me through the lights. I decided to call an electrician, thinking there might be a serious issue with the wiring. As I reached for my phone, the lights went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. I froze, my fingers hovering over the phone screen, and that's when I heard a faint, almost imperceptible whisper coming from the corner of the room. I turned on my phone's flashlight and shone it toward the sound. There was nothing there, just empty space. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. The whispering continued, growing slightly louder, but still too soft to understand. Panicking, I ran to the front door and flung it open, desperate to escape the oppressive darkness and the unsettling whispers. As soon as I stepped outside, the lights in the house came back on, steady and bright, as if nothing had ever happened. I stood on the porch, catching my breath and trying to calm down. After a few minutes, I mustered the courage to go back inside. The house was quiet, and the lights were normal again. I checked every room, making sure there was nothing out of place. Everything seemed fine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Since that night, I've always kept a flashlight close by and made sure to leave a few lights on, even when I'm alone. The memory of those flickering lights and the mysterious whispers still haunts me, a reminder that sometimes the darkness can hold more than just shadows. One quiet evening, I was relaxing at home alone, enjoying the calm. I had just finished watching a movie and was about to head to bed when I noticed something odd. The door to the kitchen, which I was certain I had closed earlier, was now wide open. A chill ran down my spine as I walked over to close it. I double-checked to make sure it was securely shut this time. Feeling uneasy, I decided to make a quick round of the house to ensure everything was in its place and all doors were locked. Satisfied, I returned to the living room to turn off the lights and head upstairs. As I reached the top of the stairs, I glanced back down the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. The kitchen door was open again. This time, it was swinging gently, as if someone had just passed through. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe a draft, but all the windows were closed, and there was no wind. Summoning my courage, I went back down to the kitchen. The door creaked as I pushed it closed again, and I made sure to lock it this time. I lingered in the kitchen, listening for any signs of movement, but the house was silent, too silent. I started back up the stairs, but halfway up, I heard the unmistakable sound of the door creaking open behind me. Fear gripped me as I slowly turned around. There it was, open again. My mind raced through possibilities, but none of them made sense. Who or what was opening the door? Grabbing a heavy flashlight from the hall closet, I cautiously approached the kitchen door once more. I peeked inside, my heart pounding. The kitchen was empty. I closed the door, locked it, and wedged a chair under the doorknob for good measure. Just as I was about to turn away, I heard a soft, almost imperceptible whisper from the darkness of the kitchen. I strained to listen, my breath caught in my throat. The whispering grew louder, more distinct, but I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like a conversation between two people, just out of reach. I backed away slowly, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The whispering stopped abruptly, and the house fell into an eerie silence. I spent the rest of the night in the living room, too scared to go upstairs. I kept the flashlight close and the lights on, jumping at every little sound. The kitchen door stayed closed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. By morning, I was exhausted but relieved that nothing else had happened. I removed the chair and carefully opened the kitchen door. Everything was as it should be, but the memory of that door opening on its own and the strange whispering still haunts me. To this day, I always make sure to double check that all doors are securely closed and locked, and I never go to bed without a flashlight nearby. One night, I was home alone, enjoying some peace and quiet. As I was about to settle down with a book, my phone rang. The number was unknown, but I answered it out of curiosity. "Hello?" I said. There was silence on the other end for a moment, and then a voice, low and raspy, whispered my name. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The caller didn't respond immediately. Instead, there was a faint sound, like breathing, before the line went dead. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was just a prank. A few minutes later, My phone rang again. It was the same unknown number. I hesitated, but then answered it. This time, the voice was clearer, still whispering, but now saying things about me, details only someone close to me would know. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened. "How do you know that?" I demanded, my fear turning into anger. But again, there was no answer, just that eerie breathing, and then the call ended. I put my phone down, my hands shaking. I decided to call a friend to stay over, but before I could, the phone rang again. I didn't want to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. The voice was back, whispering more personal details, recounting things I had done earlier that day. Panic set in. I looked around the room, feeling as if I was being watched. I ran to the windows and doors, checking to make sure they were locked. The phone rang again. This time, I didn't answer. Instead, I texted my friend, asking them to come over immediately. While waiting for my friend, I kept glancing at my phone, half expecting it to ring again. I turned on all the lights in the house, hoping it would make me feel safer, but it didn't. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat. Finally, my friend arrived. I explained what had happened, and we tried calling the unknown number back, but it was always out of service. We stayed up all night, the phone silent, but my nerves on edge. As the clock struck midnight, my phone buzzed with a text message from the unknown number. It read, "I'm closer than you think." My blood ran cold. We searched the house again, every corner, every closet, but found nothing. Suddenly, there was a loud thud from the attic. My friend and I exchanged terrified looks. Armed with a flashlight and a kitchen knife, we cautiously made our way to the attic. The door creaked open, and the flashlight beam cut through the darkness. There was nothing but old boxes and dust. Just as we were about to leave, the phone rang again. The same number. With trembling hands, I answered it, putting it on speaker so my friend could hear. The voice, now clearer and more menacing, said, "I'm watching you." The call ended abruptly. We bolted out of the attic and locked ourselves in the living room, waiting for morning. Every sound, every creak of the house made us jump. Finally, as dawn broke, we felt a bit more secure. The calls never came again, but the memory of that night haunts me. The thought that someone was watching me, knowing so much about me, still sends chills down my spine. To this day, I'm wary of unknown numbers, and I always make sure my doors and windows are securely locked.